Weekly online Blitz tournament on chess.com titled Tuesday, February 4th edition. Let's review. I hope you stay till the end of the video to see the amazing finish to the game that decided the winner of the tournament. Let's start with the game with now legendary American Grandmaster Hans Niemann against Polish Grandmaster Patrick Mrazowski. This is the position after move 17, and this position is better for white because they have a threat to take the pawn on d5 and attack the queen on c7. Black king is in the center of the board, and black plays queen takes a5. Niemann immediately starts the attack by taking the pawn on d5 and threatening to take the rook on c8. So Mrazowski exchanges the rook on c1 and takes the pawn with the queen on d5. Now Niemann plays rook c8 check. Bishop blocks the king, bishop d8, and now comes bishop g5. Sacrificing the queen on b3, cannot take the queen, because Niemann would take the bishop, and it would be a checkmate. In this position, Mrazowski plays king d7, bishop c4 attacking the queen, queen goes to e4, sacrificing the exchange on d8, bishop, rook takes d8, rook takes d8, check from d1. King goes to the middle of the board on c6. Niemann takes the rook on d8, has an extra piece, and after a series of moves, b3, attacking both the queen and the king, queen takes b3, and queen a5 checkmate. Beautiful ending to a blitz game by Hans Niemann.
Chess speaks for itself.
Evgeny Shuvalov against Levon Aronyan, Armenian grandmaster who now lives in the United States. Black position is better. They have very active bishops. They have an open f-file to attack the white king. They have a beautiful knight on g4, but nothing concrete yet. So therefore, Shuvalov plays b3, thinking that there are no threats against his position, but he is wrong. Aronyan plays knight takes f2, sacrificing the knight. Turns out you cannot take the knight, because after bishop d4, the knight is pinned, and it's pretty much game over. Therefore, Shuvalov takes the pawn on c4, gets an attack on the knight by g4. The knight goes away to h4. Knight h3 check, another sacrifice of the knight. Now white takes the knight. Queen f2 check. King goes to h1. And here comes the bishop. D takes c4. The bishop opens up, attacking the king. Bishop went to f3 to block the king from the check. Bishop takes f3 check, knight takes f3. Aronyan takes the queen and wins the game. Beautiful attack by Armenian/American grandmaster. Indian grandmaster Pranav against Russian grandmaster Novoselov. In this position, white is attacking the black king. Everything seems to be aiming to the black king's position, but black has an extra rook. That's important. With an extra rook, black should have won this game, but they made a crucial mistake playing knight d5. And here comes Pranav's very nice attack. Bishop takes g7 check, king takes g7, queen takes h7 check, king goes to f6, g7, threatening to promote the queen, queen f4 check, king goes to b1, b4 trying to create some counterplay on the queen side, check from g6, king goes to the middle of the board on e5, queen takes on c6, attacking the rook on a8, and the queen is still a possibility. So black takes the pawn on a3, queen takes the rook on a8, pawn takes pawn on b2, and now the threat is queen c1 check and promotion of the pawn to b1 checkmate. So white has to be careful, and they sacrifice the queen. Queen takes d5, check. It's a sacrifice for one move only. King takes the d5, b8 promotion of the pawn with the check, with the queen. King goes to d6, knight takes the pawn, bishop f6, queen b8, skewer, king moves away, Pranav takes the queen and wins the game.
No, it's just crazy.
The next game we're going to look at is between Pierre-Laurent Pauly, French grandmaster, and Turkish sensation, 16-year-old Ediz Gurel. This is the position on the board. White is a lot better. You can see all their pieces are very active. The queen on d6 is very good positioned. Open file for the rook. The knights are beautifully placed. The king is in the middle, which could be a problem, but not in this position. And here, white starts a great attack. h5, attacking the knight. Now, the knight really doesn't have many moves to go to, so therefore counterattack of the white knight with f6. h-take g6, sacrificing the rook on h1. Turkish grandmaster takes the rook on h1 with the queen and gets g takes h7, check, the only move, king h8, and now comes sacrifice of the knight. Knight takes f6, queen h4, check, king goes to d1. Now, let's take a look. If black took the knight on f6, then there is simply checkmate, queen takes f6. So therefore, queen h4 check, king goes to d1, and now rook e7, and here comes the sacrifice of the queen. Queen takes e7. And if knight takes e7, knight f7, beautiful checkmate with the knight. Instead, black played queen h5, smart way to prolong the game, because now if white takes the queen, black will take the queen also. But Pauly plays, after exchanging with the queens, he plays bishop d3 and has an extra piece. g6, knight f6, king g7, check, king goes back, knight goes to d6, again white plays with an extra piece in a totally winning position, and after promotion of the pawn to h8, rook takes h8, and exchanging more pieces, white has an extra rook and easily won the game. Next game we're going to see is again Hans Niemann playing black against Guha Mitrabha, the Indian grandmaster. So many of them right now. In this position is pretty even, although visually it seems like black are doing better. They have H file open for the rook and the queen, but there is no checkmate yet because the bishop is protecting the square H1. And white has an extra exchange. They have two rooks against one and the knight. And here, critical mistake by Guha Mitrabha. He takes the bishop on d6 and immediately loses the game to this following combination. Hans plays queen h2 check, king f1, knight d2, double check. King goes to e1, knight takes f3 with the check, bishop takes f3, queen g1, and now look at the sequence of checks by Niemann. King d2, queen f2 check, king c3, queen e3 check, king b4, queen takes d4 check, king takes b5 the bishop, queen b6 check, and in this position white resigned, because with the next moves, black just takes all the pieces, the rook first, and they can even take the rook here and the bishop here and win this position easily. So Hans Niemann won another great game. in this tournament, and we are going to see Vietnamese grandmaster, very strong blitz player, especially online, Le Quan Lim, against another legendary American grandmaster and one of the best American players in the last 10-15 years, great streamer, Hikaru Nakamura. The position on the board is a little better for white, and here comes an absolutely amazing sequence of exchanges and captures, starting with Nakamura taking the pawn on c4. Quan Lim takes the bishop on g7. If you take the bishop on g7, then white will simply take the knight and will have an extra piece. So Nakamura goes knight a3, forking the queen and the rook. Queen has to go back. Queen c1. Knight takes b1. Bishop takes f8. Queen takes the rook. Bishop takes on d3. Takes the knight here. Bishop takes a pawn on e7. Black goes queen c7, attacking the bishop on d7, on e7. Another pawn taken with the bishop. Knight takes d6, and knight takes b1. And after all this exchanges, white has an extra pawn, pretty winning position, especially on the grandmaster level. 2 seconds remaining on Hikaru Nakamura clock. There were about 20 more moves here. We're not going to see them, but it's a pretty technical position to win for white, and they did that. And here comes the most important game of the tournament between Le Quan Lim and Pragnananda, famous Indian grandmaster. Each of them, before this game, has 10 out of 10. They won all 10 games. So this game will decide who will be the winner. So we'll look at the whole game, although the most interesting part will come at the very end. d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, c4, bishop b4 check, and we have Baga Indian, Bagalubov defense. Normally, the knight goes to c3, and that would be a Nimzo Indian defense, but in this case, bishop goes to d2, queen e7 protecting the bishop, g3 opening the square for a light square bishop for white, exchange of the bishops on d2, knight goes to c6 developing, a3 protecting the square b4, castle, bishop goes to g2 developing, d6, castle, very typical position in this opening. White has territorial advantage in the middle of the board, but black has no weaknesses and easy play. e5, very good thematical type of move to challenge white center in the middle. Knight develops to c3, bishop goes to g4, developing move, e3, e4, attacking the knight on f3. So the knight moves away to g5, and now the pawn on e4 is under attack. So therefore bishop goes back to defend at bishop f5, f3, challenging black pawn on e4, exchange of the pawns on f3, and knight goes to a nice position on e4. Vietnamese grandmaster takes the knight, and Pragnananda takes it back, so exchange of the knights on e4 square. Rook goes to e1, additional protection of the weak pawn on e3. Knight b8. This is the move to transfer the knight from the position where he doesn't do anything to more appropriate and more active squares. On f6, let's say, white goes knight h4 to put the knight on a nice square on f5, knight d7, exchange of the bishops, rook f4 attacking the queen, queen goes back, knight goes to an active square on f5. The position is still even, although visually it looks better for white. g6 attacking the knight, d5 counterattacking the queen. Queen is more important, has to go back, went back to e8. Now knight is already under attack, has to be protected, goes to h6 with a check. King g7 attacking the knight, and e4. e4, and now you cannot take the knight on h6, because after rook takes f7, there's going to be a check, and after, let's say, g5 and h4, white position is totally winning. Therefore, black goes knight e5. Praggnanandhaa puts his knight on a beautiful square on e5, and the knight becomes an absolute monster here. Plus, he's protecting the pawn on f7. Rook f1, but again, the pawn is fully protected. Queen e7, rook h4, trying to create some play on an h-file. Praggnanandhaa goes f6, knight g4, very logical to open the square for the queen. g5, blocking the diagonal for the queen. Smart move, knight e3, although the rook was under attack. The knight will go to f5 and fork the king and the queen. So therefore, black moves the king away to h8. Now the rook was under attack, so rook h6. Rook went to e8, queen c3, rook f7, and knight goes to a very active square on f5 and attacking the queen. The queen moves away to f8. Now the knight has no moves, because if it moves, Praggnanandhaa will take the rook. Therefore, Vietnamese player removes the rook ahead of time, rook h5, c6, challenging white center, exchange the pawns on c6, and h4, trying to open up files to attack the black king. But by opening the files, white actually opened g file for black. And now rook on g7 becomes very dangerous. Queen g2, extra protection of the pawn on g3. Rook goes to g4, trying to double up on the g file. And now comes critical mistake by Nakamura Lim. He plays rook f4, and in this position, Praggnanandhaa could win the game on the spot with a nice combination. Rook takes f4, g takes f4, queen g8 check, queen g3, and nice subtle move, queen f7, attacking the rook on h5. And if the rook goes away, rook g8, pinning the queen to the king and winning the game. With 7 seconds to go on the clock, Praggnanandhaa didn't see that and played queen g7, putting more pressure on the pawn g3. Knight f5 attacking the queen, queen goes to g6 attacking the rook. Rook attacks the queen from h6, queen g5, exchange of the rooks on g4. Rook came back to h1. Praggnanandhaa takes the pawn on e4. His position is totally winning. And here, Nakamura Lim blunders a queen. Actually, after this move, rook f1, rook e2 check, king f3, and now, after rook e5, knight takes d6. It's a blunder of the queen. Praggnanandhaa goes rook d3, attacking the queen and the king. King went back to g2. In this position, obviously, Praggnanandhaa could just take the queen on c3 and easily win. He makes probably even better move. He plays queen h5, threatening checkmate in one move on h2. Nakamura Lim has 2 seconds to go and makes a move of the tournament, or should I say anti-move of the tournament, and he puts his queen on the square e5. This is possibly the worst move you can ever make in a chess game. You put your best piece, queen, under attack of the rook, of the pawn, of the knight, of the queen. So, you would think that Pragnananda would just go queen h2, checkmate, game over, tournament over. But I guess the move queen e5 put an absolute shock on Pragnananda, who probably never saw this type of move ever in his life. This bad move. So, with 3 seconds to go, he was probably in total shock, and he didn't make the next move on time and lost this game because he ran out of time. And Lee Kwan Lim became the champion of Title Tuesday of this Blitz tournament, online tournament, by winning all 11 games. So I would be curious to know your opinion of this move, Queen e5. On the one hand, this is all by the rules. You can make any moves. And good for Vietnamese grandmaster that he put the opponent in such a shock that Pragnananda didn't really manage to make the next move and lost the game. On the other hand, is it really a fair play to make moves like that on grandmaster level? Not sure about. So your comments below would be appreciated. Thank you for watching.